Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 397 of the All Dolphins podcast. And you see a new face next to me. It's actually not a new face. Been on before, but as part of a collective now. He's a mano a mano guest, Adam Beasley from Pro Football Network, where you can catch his work as, shockingly enough, Pro Football Network, pfn.com. Adam Beasley, how are you, sir?
So what you're saying, Alan, is as the season goes on and the team's worse and worse, you bring in the worse and worse co-host. Is that how this is going?
Wow. A little self-deprecating humor to start off with. I like that. We like self-deprecating humor. And don't pretend like I haven't been hounding you all year to appear on the All Dolphins podcast. And you just finally decided that maybe I was worthy of your time or something.
That's true. That is true.
I can do self-deprecating too. Speaking of self-deprecating, the Miami Dolphins could do some of that as well. Oops. You put out a tweet that kind of struck a nerve with me earlier this week, or may have been one of our text messages among the beat writers and I hope I'm not revealing any secrets you didn't want out, but it seems so obvious that Buffalo is going to win this game that it almost feels like it's a setup and the Dolphins are actually, when we least expected, going to win.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history and
care to comment?
The history against the Bills have been so bad for so long. They haven't won in Buffalo since 2016. I think they've lost 5 straight against the Bills, including the playoffs. You go back and the 2020s were like the 1970s were in reverse when the Dolphins would just curb stomp those guys every week, every time they played. I just got a weird feeling, man. I like the NFL teams are too good. There's too much parity. The Dolphins are too talented to go 2-6, right? I mean, that's just off the top of my head. It's like, how can this team with all this talent? I know Tua was out for a month, but how can these guys go 2-6? And at some point, you're going to have to win games that you're not supposed to. Mike McDaniel really has not done that. Like, you look at the history of the Dolphins in the last 3 seasons, they're great at home by and large, last week notwithstanding. They're really good on the road against bad teams, i.e. New England. But you go and you get them against a playoff contending team either at home or on the road, and they fold. And it's, the faces change, the story remains the same no matter who they put out there. They just can't get it done. So yes, the cynic in me, the historian in me, I'm a creature of repetition and patterns and all that. Everything's screaming Dolphins win. And sometimes when it's that obvious,
you mean Buffalo win?
Buffalo wins. But sometimes when it's that obvious, you got to expect the unexpected. And so I it's not like there's some enormous gulf in talent between the Bills and the Dolphins. Yes, the Bills are more talented. Yes, they're healthier certainly on defense with Zach Sealer out, with Kader Kuhu out, with Javon Holland likely out. There's a difference there, but it's not. It really shouldn't be Alabama versus Troy, right? It should not be so one-sided. And again, we can point to the quarterback, the discrepancy there. But beyond that, I don't see a huge amount of talent differential between these two teams. At some point, it's going to be the Dolphins' time. Just, luck, and no other reason, or randomness, or statistical anomaly. No matter what you want to say, at some point, they're going to get the result. And to me, look, the offense wasn't perfect last week, but it was leaps and bounds better than what we've seen. Certainly, Tua, we have an advanced stat that we created here at PFN called QB Plus. And, if you're thinking it's going to be passer rating or QBR, all these things, no, we look at it from a different perspective. We include some things that maybe others don't. And that was the best quarterback performance in a loss in the last 6 seasons by the Miami Dolphins. And you think some of the games that they've had where quarterbacks have played pretty well and they've lost, including Tua in Buffalo a couple of years ago, that was the best. To me, that suggests the offense is figuring it out. It's been coming now, even with Snoop Huntley as their quarterback. You're going to have to win a shootout, I think, because that defense is going to give up some points. But I think they can do it. And I think, the Bills are a great team. They're not a plus 11 turnover differential team. And that, to me, is like maybe sometimes it regresses to the mean. Sometimes those things are going to even out. The Dolphins have been so unlucky for so long. I just think at some point that luck has to change.
Yeah, and the way I look at it also, I think the Dolphins, by their own mismanagement, put themselves in a really bad spot with the backup QB. And last week, Tua comes back. The offense finally looks like an NFL offense, but maybe there was some bad mojo residue that caused them to lose a game that they really shouldn't have lost. And maybe the mojo turns around. And you made the other good point is at some point, if the Dolphins ultimately, and it's probably not happening this year, but ultimately are going to get to where they want to go, they're going to have that big marquee win on the road. And even beyond Baltimore week 2 in 2022, which to me remains probably Mike McDaniel's signature win.
Yeah, I mean, that Chargers win last year was pretty good. It was back and forth. It was you saw the offense playing a way that we, even in that Baltimore game, that we really had. And that Baltimore game was a bunch of big plays. That Chargers game was real offense that we saw. But to your point, you can count on two fingers the number of times they've been really, truly impressive on the road against a quality opponent. So yeah, I'm with you. Do I think it's going to happen? We have a little gentleman's bet for Onus and I at the Sun Sentinel that I think that this is the year they break through. I actually took the Dolphins in our PFN picks because we pick every game of the season. And I actually took them. The only one, the company that took the Dolphins, just because weird bleep happens, right? Like you're relying on weird stuff happening. Agreed, for the Dolphins to win this game, but it really hasn't happened in their favor in a very, very long time. So, the Bills and Chiefs are probably the two best teams in the AFC, with all apologies to the Ravens. I think those two are the top two teams. Certainly the Texans, after we saw last night, have got some questions.
That offensive line, oof.
Yeah, very bad. Very, very bad. The Jets look like the Jets defense we thought it would at the start of the season. But it's not like the Dolphins are terrible. Yes, they were really, really bad when their quarterback got hurt. He's back now. Do I think they're one of the 5 best teams in the AFC? Absolutely not. But I do think they're one of the top half teams at full strength with their quarterback. And mid-pack teams can go on the road and beat a team occasionally that's better than them. And that's what they're going to have to do to save their season.
Yeah, and in 2022, I would make the argument the Bills were better than the Dolphins. And it was one of those cases where Dolphins probably shouldn't have won the game, but you had a perfect storm of Dolphins being very, very opportunistic, Buffalo leaving points on the field, and boom, you win 21-19, even though you got outgained badly. It may take one of those because, as you mentioned earlier, and very quickly, the Dolphin injury report, Cater Kohu officially out, Zach Sealer, more importantly, no offense, Cater, more importantly, officially out, tight end Julian Hill, shoulder officially out. I'm sure that's going to really bum out a lot of Dolphin fans. No lie told, Javon Holland, doubtful. Mike McDaniel told us before practice that he wasn't really optimistic he would play. And then 3 players are listed as questionable. That's fullback Alec Ingold, who's been dealing with a calf injury lately. Cornerback Storm Duck has an ankle injury, didn't play last week against Arizona. And finally, River Craycraft, who has a shoulder injury, coming back from IR. And McDaniel said before practice, probably out of caution, going to keep him out another week. And then Buffalo has only fullback Reggie Gillum listed as out with a hip injury. They have 3 guys listed as questionable who I would expect to play. So major advantage Buffalo in terms of the injury report there.
Yeah, and you look at the trends, the betting trends aren't great for the Dolphins. They're 6-point road underdogs. That is almost always kryptonite for this team. They don't even cover when they're road underdogs, let alone win outright. I mean, it's kind of bleak, and there's a reason that 90% of the money was on Bills money line, which is minus 265. 90% of the money is willing to lay minus 265. That's how much they think the Bills are going to win. I might be the only person in America who thinks the Dolphins have a shot. I mean, really, it's crazy how much action there has been against them. And look, I understand the trends. Dolphins bad on the road. Dolphins bad against good teams. Dolphins bad second half of the season. And I don't think we've discussed that really. They're 3-8 on the road after Halloween under Mike McDaniel. That includes obviously the 2 playoff losses, but 3-8 in the roads, that's not great. And you can remember some of the games that they won. What was it? That Jets Black Friday game when Tim Boyle was the quarterback. That's one of the 3 wins that they have after Halloween. It's not great. Here's nuts. Here's something crazy. Since 2004, Alan, the Dolphins are 4-17 in Buffalo, and they've been outscored by 225 points. So, I mean, it's not even like these games are close. They're losing by 2 scores, 3 scores every single time they go up there. I can understand why the betting public has no faith in the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it's not at least a touchdown as a point spread. But and this is where I'm going to point out because I've been accused of selling hopium, as they call it. Um, 2 years ago, the Dolphins played the Bills in Buffalo twice. They lost by 3 points each time, including once with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. So this idea that it can't be done, no. And Dolphin fans right now don't want to hear it. Like they suck. Everybody's a loser. They need to all be scrapped, trade everybody, and all that. But again, it's not. They haven't gone while the season's gone sideways. They haven't gone from being a playoff contender, likely playoff team, to maybe Super Bowl contender if everything goes right, to being a crap team. I mean, it's not like, and you mentioned that before. And here's the thing: if the Dolphins do happen to win, all of a sudden you're 3-5, still a long road ahead. But now you're buoyed by that win at Buffalo, and all of a sudden it's like, okay. I mean, the sky is not. It's not gray. I mean, gray skies with thunderstorms approaching.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I don't think the Rams are. They're next week. They're an unbeatable team. I mean, primetime games aren't great for the Dolphins, but the Rams are. They're not a great team this year. So if you figure out your offense, maybe get Sealer back and Cater back, and that. Look, guys. I mean, Alan, we haven't talked about this yet. What in the world's going on with this pass rush? I mean, to me, that is just absolutely jaw-dropping. They have 9 sacks, second fewest in the league behind the Atlanta Falcons. And here's it's a really crazy stat. I'm pulling it up from my preview. The average NFL team records a sack on 21.5% of dropbacks in which they create pressure. So if you bring pressure, basically a 1 in 5 chance that you're going to get a sack out of it.
Okay.
Through 8 weeks, Miami is 12.3%, the second lowest in the league. So it is basically Chop Robinson as an entire defense, able to generate some pressure, able to be a bit disruptive, but they just can't get home. They just can't get those plays. And we saw time after time after time last week against Kyler Murray, where they're bringing a free rusher. They have a shot on them, and they just can't do it. They can't bring it down. I mean, between whiffs and missed tackles and just bad angles, they probably had 10 to 12, 14 plays last week that gained way more yards than it should have. And is that something that can be fixed? I mean, Jalen Phillips ain't walking through that door. Bradley Chubb's not going to play for a while. They drafted Chop, whatever it was, 21st, whatever it was overall, for a reason. Dude's got to start making some plays for them.
No, without question. And by the way, Adam referenced his game preview. Check it out on pfn.com. I will have my own game preview on Miami Dolphins on SI.com on Saturday. We do it a little differently. So here's the deal. Check out both of those for free, not behind a paywall. Okay?
It's even better right there. It's going to cost you absolutely nothing, except for a little bit of time, and maybe you'll be exposed to an ad or two. If you want to click, if you want to engage, we're not going to argue with you, okay?
Do it. See, I'm more forceful than bees. Do it. I'll be honest with you. I'm not shocked about the pass rush, and I'm not playing the results here. I wrote all along coming into the season that was going to be a concern because you knew you weren't going to have Bradley Chubb to start off with. A lot of it was going to be dependent on Chop Robinson, and unfortunately, what he's doing now is what he did at Penn State. Dude has an issue finishing. That's a pry. And then and Quentin Bell, great story in training camp for 2 weeks. And then the second the joint practices started, boom, that was it. And now.
And we found out, sorry to cut you off, we found out this week that Emmanuel Ogbah is playing with a torn bicep.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I thought last year was bad for their edge pass rushers, but I mean, they're getting crushed early on. At least they had 2.5, 3 months of the season where they could get pressure on the quarterback. Now it's rough. So, we talk to Anthony Weaver every week, and, he finds different ways to get Jalen Ramsey involved. I don't know if you want to be bringing your best cover corner on blitzes against Josh Allen this week. I mean, they've got to find a way, though, to simulate pressure without their front four, because they clearly can't count on those guys to do it consistently.
No, and that's a major problem. And this is where Mohamed Kamara has been inactive every week but one. And the 1 week you could sense him a little bit in the pass rush. But Weave is explaining always it's about rookie mistakes, and then he threw out special teams, which is why Quentin Bell's playing above him, because Quentin Bell every week gets one among the most special team snaps. This is where I say, you know what? Right now, your pass rush, I think, is more in need than maybe your special teams. And I know that's saying a lot, actually, saying that special teams don't need any help. But right now, I think the pass rush is more of a crisis situation.
You know, it's wild. And again, teams aren't giving away pass rushers, but if they weren't 2-5, I would absolutely think they're in the market for one. Like trade deadlines on Tuesday, I mean, I could 100% see them kicking the tires. But if you're Stephen Ross, you are not greenlighting any big expenses. In fact, you're Steve Ross and they lose this week, and I wrote this last week, you're probably more prone to say, all right, who can we unload? Like, save me a little bit of money, get us some assets that's going to help us when the season's not lost. I mean, Calais Campbell is really, I think, one of their 2 or 3 best defensive players. He's on a 1-year deal. He is absolutely someone I could see them moving if they lose this week, just simply because he came here to ring chase, and it's with the ring as your toilet bowl swirling down as you go out to sea. I mean, that's. Yeah, I think they would owe it to him. I think they would owe it maybe to Teron Armstead, who, by the way, knock on wood, that guy's been healthy this year, right? I mean, for all
you had to bring it up, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I don't believe in jinxes, so
okay, good. There goes in here.
For all the grief we gave him all off season, he took a pay cut. He's out there, so I think even if you don't want to blow up the nucleus, Tyreek, Ramsey, guys like that, I would absolutely be willing to move guys like Calais and Armstead, because I mean, certainly the defense front 7 would hurt by having him, move on. But on offense, you want to see what Patrick Paul's got anyway, right? I mean, at some point you want to get him the snaps and he needs the reps. If you're 2-6, what do you gain by playing those guys? You gain getting their contracts off your books, saving a little bit of money, and getting an asset for 2025.
And I wrote something along those lines on MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com actually today. And there was some pushback from others in the media who made the point, which is not completely crazy, that why would Chris Grier trade away veterans if he's fighting for his job? To which I might say, is he really fighting for his job, or does that gentleman have an awful lot of equity with owner Stephen Ross?
Well, we're going to go down this road. Certainly, if you're one that wants to fire people, Chris Grier is giving you ammunition, right? He is giving you talking points, because you look at, he's been here 24 years. He's here as long as the drought, basically, that they haven't won a playoff game. This is his second coach now that things aren't working out great with, that he's handpicked. I know I'm not going to blame him for Gase or Philbin, but I mean, after they blew out Gase, and it was Chris Grier running the show, and he hired Brian Flores, and he had a big hand in hiring Mike McDaniel, and he had a huge hand in all these trades to get these veterans. That, think about these big swings that they've taken the last couple of years. Tyreek not having a great year. I think a lot of that's quarterback driven, but he's not having a great year. Bradley Chubb hurt. Armstead wasn't a trade, but he's been fine. Ramsey has been pretty good, but you put all their contracts together and all the draft picks that they've cost you together. Right now, would they be a better team if they didn't make those moves? I can't say, but certainly what he has done hasn't worked out. Having a totally top-heavy roster has not worked out, particularly when that top-heavy roster includes a quarterback that gets hurt all the time, a rush end that gets hurt all the time, a left tackle that this year, notwithstanding, gets hurt all the time. And Tyreek, certainly, he was great the last 2 years, but maybe he's showing some signs of decline at age 30. He's a speed guy. You don't know. And all these dudes, except for Teron, they just doubled and tripled down on, right? They just gave a bunch of more money too. So if you're Steve Ross, you're like, I've given you everything you've asked for, literally every dime. I built you from scratch a practice facility that has gotten me called the best owner in the NFL by the Players Association, done all these things, and we're still no better than we were in 2021. That's tough to swallow.
Yeah, and this is where I've gotten flack from some viewers in the comments for saying this. I'm going to say it again. Sorry. Remember the buzzword after Brian Flores was fired was collaboration. How much of this is Chris Grier deferring too much on certain personnel decisions, including, i.e., the backup quarterback situation, where Mike McDaniel may have convinced him, I'm going to make it work with Skyler and Mike White. We're good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, he can't skate. And again, only Chris, Mike, Brandon Shore, Tom Garfinkel, and Steve Ross know the exact dynamic of who's to blame for what. They're not going to throw each other under the bus, at least not publicly yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But you look, and again, I like Chris a lot. The one constant over all the years is him.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I understand he has been deferential, but if you the GM have a voice too, you have agency, and if you see Skylar Thompson and Mike White as your backup quarterback situation, as that's the plan, and there's a guy like I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo available, or a ton of other guys, Sam Darnold even, who have come in and played well for other teams.
Mariota would have been an upgrade.
Yep. I can see it. So we started this conversation talking about the trade deadline. If I'm Steve Ross, I don't care what Chris Greer says. I'll go to Chris like, this is what you're doing. And if you don't, I will find someone who will step in, one of your underlings, to make those trades for you. Yeah. I mean, listen, why would you sacrifice a potential off-ramp for a lot of these contracts to get yourself draft picks, which this team clearly needs to get younger, right? It is the oldest team in the National Football League, one of the oldest teams in the National Football League.
Hold on, because I'm sorry. What's the biggest name you would either suggest gets traded, or you could even conceive as fathomable could be traded?
Oh, I mean, Tyreek.
Whoa. See, I have a hard time believing that Stephen Ross is going to a trade of Tyreek, 3 months after he just, shelled out some more money.
Well, I mean, you go and look at that contract. All really he did was guarantee next year. So it's not like he gave him a huge signing bonus. So he guaranteed next year, which is probably smart business, to be honest. And honestly, doing the contract that way made it him easier to trade, I think, because the team that will acquire him will have a very, very palatable contract situation for the player that they get. I think we need, and I think the Dolphins in particular, but in NFL, we need to think more in lines of players or assets. They do it in baseball. They do it in basketball. They don't throw bad money after good, and just because I made a decision 3 months ago that maybe wasn't the right decision, I'm going to be afraid to walk away from it. And so I think acknowledging that this core isn't going to win the Super Bowl would be a sign of growth. I think doubling and tripling down on a team that, let me ask you, do you think that if they run it back next year and Tua stays healthy, this team is going to get to the AFC Championship game?
It would take a perfect storm of circumstances, because I think I think that team as constructed has a ceiling.
I agree, and it's become more and more evident that they built this thing the wrong way. So to me, this is the way I see it. I see it from more of an economic standpoint than I do a football standpoint. You have value. You have assets that are desirable. A team who needs a left tackle that wants to make a run would absolutely give up a third-round pick for Teron Armstead for a rental. Absolutely. He is playing you go and look at his advanced stats, he's playing at a Pro Bowl level. He's playing very, very well. That's worth a third-round pick for a team that is on the verge and just needs a left tackle to solidify their offensive line. If you're a team, I don't know, like the Kansas City Chiefs that can't score a ton of points right now, and you have a great relationship and great success with a player that might be available, would you give up the 31st, 32nd pick in the draft for Tyreek for 3 more years?
After they just traded for Hopkins?
Okay, well, understood, but they're not the only team. They're not the only example of a team that Tyreek Hill. But I think that they have to think outside the box, and they can't just be like, all right, we committed to this, let's see it through. Well, you're going to see it through, and you're going to have a lot of the same problems in 2025 you're having in 2024. And if you move away from, I feel like if you move away from some of these players, you're not waving the white flag on 25. You're opening yourself up to possibilities. Like you're freeing up money that you can spend. I know the cap hit maybe be a little tough in the short term. You can change things around, restructure deals. really cash is what matters. And you're getting a lot of cash off their books if you move some of these contracts. So you can do deals in a way that help you.
Yeah.
I feel like if they see this through, everyone's saying, well, this is the core and this is what you built and you got to roll with it. How's next year going to be much different? Yeah, they probably won't get their quarterback hurt. Maybe not. And if they do, they'll have a better backup. Is this team a backup quarterback away from being 6-1, 5-2?
If you look, forget, going through puberty here. Excuse me. If you look at the opponents against whom they lost some of these games, I'm telling you,
That's all choked up.
I don't know. It's very emotional for me right now. Yeah, they could have been at least 4-3. I mean, there's no way you lose at Indy if they'd had decent quarterbacking. In Tennessee, they probably wouldn't have lost that game either. That's 2 right off the bat. The other ones, but no, you make a good point. I can't. You make a good point. I'm not sure that's what they're going to do because I do think, based on where they were last year, man.
You get some water?
Yeah, no, you have water right here. Based on where they were last year. Based on where they were last year at 11-4, I think this is where they kind of decided this is it. Yeah.
They were 11-4 last year. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So they've lost 8 of their last 10 games. Oh my God.
Yeah. And this is where I think this is, first of all, this is why. Okay, well, we faded on the stretch because of injuries. This is their mindset. And so let's go ahead and re-up everybody, including the restructure of Tyreek, Ramsey extension, even though he had 2 years left on his contract. Mike McDaniel had 2 years left on his contract. I think they fancied this idea of this is the core that's going to get us there. And I don't know that they're not going to go ahead and go, well, if it doesn't get hurt, all we have to do is just get better at backup quarterback and we'll be fine. And to me, a key moment in terms of the team building, and you feel free to tell me if you disagree, 6th pick of the 2021 draft after they went 12-3-6, where they went with speed and Jalen Waddle when they could have and very easily should have taken Penei Sewell. Because if you look at Detroit, Jared Goff's playing lights out. I don't know that anybody's going to look at Jared Goff and go, wow, that guy. I mean, he is a...
Yeah, no, I get the point you're making, but we also got to remember, Tua had the worst weapons in the National Football League his rookie year. I mean, they were so bad in 2020. And B, they didn't know they were going to get Tyreek Hill. So, I mean, that's...
correct.
If they didn't get Tyreek, I think Waddle would have had 1,700 yards last year. I think they would have. I think he would have had maybe some of the deep balls that went his way wouldn't have been quite the same, but he would have at least had 1,500 yards last year. He would have gotten an insane amount of usage. His target rate would have been enormous. And they would have gone and signed another speed guy. They would have found somebody else. So I think the way they've structured this offense, which I have been on the record saying, I don't know if this thing works, but that's totally the vision Mike McDaniel's had. So I don't know if an offensive lineman in that moment would have been the play, simply because they first of all it wasn't Mike's pick. It was Brian Flores was here then.
Right.
A and B, they had to do everything they could to get that quarterback to play well, and he needed weapons desperately. And if we got to do some more context too. Remember that draft? Like Jamar Chase was in that draft. Pitts was in that draft, and there was one other wide receiver who's that?
Devontae Smith.
And Devontae Smith, that's right. So if they would have not gotten any of those dudes, those 4 guys, and you have the number 3 pick of the draft, and you don't get any of those 4 guys for your quarterback that was really bad the year before, and it's no small part because he had no one to throw to, I think that would have been a mistake.
My counter to that is, what's more difficult to find, a stud wide receiver or a tone-setting franchise offensive lineman?
Yeah. Well, they thought they had one in Armstead. He just can't stay healthy. I couldn't stay healthy.
He wasn't there then. That was 2021. And
yeah. Then they used free agency to go and address that. What they wouldn't have, who they obviously wouldn't have signed if Sewell was there.
Correct. again, we're playing it. I'm partly playing the result, but to me, again, if it's stud wide receiver, or I mean, and Penei Sewell did not take anybody by surprise. He came into the draft. The analysis was, high ceiling and very, very high floor too. So it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. He was going to be a stud all around. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. So Dolphins go on a 5-game winning streak based on what you said.
Well, I think they get one on Sunday. I mean, again, it's going to take that 21-19 type of situation, or you know what it is, the wild card game, which if they had Tua in that game, they probably would have won, because I mean the passing game I think wasn't what it should have been. But they're going to need some breaks, right? They're going to need the things that have. I mean, they're one of the worst teams in turnover differential. The Bills are the best team in turnover differential. They need to flip that. Like, that dynamic's got to change. And they just can't, like, Josh Allen's going to get his. He just can't go nuclear, right? He can't have 380 and 4 touchdowns. Like, it just can't happen. If it's 270 and 2 touchdowns and interception, I like the Dolphins' chances. But if he, I mean, I pulled his stats. Like, it's crazy. Like, him against the Dolphins is the best quarterback in the history of the game. Mm-hmm. Like, his numbers are 34 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 110 passer rating. 8 point something yards per attempt. He would be statistically the best quarterback in the history of the game if he played the Miami Dolphins every week. Very mediocre, not mediocre, but average to above average against everyone else. I think his passer rating against everyone else is like 90, 92. That's not mediocre, but it's not great. Yeah. He's got really, really, really fat on beating up on the Miami Dolphins. Maybe at some point they figure him out. I mean, maybe.
Love averages, right?
Yeah. At some point, everything's not going to go wrong for them. Like, at some point, might not be tomorrow, but at some point that they're going to have that breakthrough win.
It would be nice if it would be to get to raise the morale of Dolphin fans, who are a lot of you guys have checked out. It's something actually I would imagine most of you guys watching this have not checked out. But nice to bring everybody back. So
I wonder, would they celebrate a fluky win? If it is like a 3-0 turnover margin, like 3 picks for the Bills, none for the Dolphins, they win that way. Would they celebrate it, or would they just see it not sustainable and as a fluky win?
Oh, I think they would absolutely take it, because that week 3 win in 2022 was kind of fluky. Again, when you get outgained by 285 yards, as I do quick math, and you win, well, Buffalo's got guys puking all over the place and practically falling down. You take it. It doesn't matter how it's
if they're puking on Sunday, it'll be because of bad chicken wings, not because of any weather. I think it's going to be 52, 53 degrees at kickoff, so it should be good football weather.
Yep, nice. So that's going to wrap it up. Please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Adam Beasley, Pro Football Network. Check out his work at pfn.com. Again, no paywall, just like Miami Dolphins on SI.com, no paywall. So we'll be back here on possibly Saturday if there are moves that are worth discussing. If not, we'll do the live post game show on Sunday. Until then, have a great one, everyone. Thanks for watching.